All right. Perfect. It's good now. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Taste Like Music. Jason, Joe, and Crams are here. Been a while since we've done a listography, it feels like. But we're finally getting to Björk. She was the Patreon poll winner. We've been putting it off a couple weeks. We had some illness. I'm still sick now, so I might be coughing. Cram has a blue finger. So, yeah, this should be interesting. I don't know what you guys are going to think of her. I've talked about her a little on the channel. I think she had at least one appearance in my Songs of the Year lists. Don't remember if she had more than that. But I have heard most of these. We're doing 13, by the way. We're doing the 10 core studio albums. We're also doing the record from when she was 11 called Björk. We're doing the 2 soundtracks. We're not doing Glinglow as a collaborative album. Maybe we should have, but I don't know. We're not counting that one. So 13's our count. I've heard the majority of them. Never heard the Björk album. Never heard the soundtracks. I think I've heard all of the other ones. How about you guys?
Bjork's kind of like a weird, one of those just weird outliers where I know her, but I don't at the same time. I never heard her actual debut, Björk, when she was 11 years old. Never heard that before. But I did going into this note, debut, post, Homogenic, Vespertine. Never listened to Medúlla, Volta, Biophilia. I did know Vulnicura, and I might be pronouncing these incorrectly. And I knew Utopia, and I listened to Fossora like down to the wire, getting ready for our albums of the year last year when I was at O'Hare Airport getting ready to come back for Christmas. So like pretty familiar with half, but still, like, as much as I have listened to her, she's still someone that just has always fallen through the cracks because she's just so weird. And and it's one of those things, like we've said it before with a bunch of artists, like I just find her more interesting than engaging. So like it's something that I don't really go back to a lot unless like I'm kind of told to, where it's like, oh, there's a new Björk album, I find that interesting, I'll check it out. But like, am I walking around like in my social life listening to Björk? Not very much.
You need to get to Iceland, my friend. Spend a little more time in Scandinavia. I've heard one Björk album, Fossora, which I listened to last year. That's it. I'm sure I've heard some Björk songs, but I didn't really recognize any of them. So I pretty much came into this completely new, completely Björkless. It's Björk, right? Björk, yeah. Björk. See, I don't even know her name. I just assumed it was always Björk because it sounds cooler than Björk. I'm not a big fan of the word Björk.
Well, I mean, in American culture, the most famous thing about Björk is her dress at the Oscars the one year. Like that's what everyone knows her for. My girl Winona Ryder portrayed her on Celebrity SNL on when she did SNL or whatever, Celebrity Jeopardy. But like that, like she's never on the radio here ever. Dancer in the Dark was not a huge film here, but like people probably still know the name just because she crosses the Atlantic with just her notoriety, which is impressive.
Very critically beloved, of course.
Yeah, and I know I've mentioned her before, like in honorable mentions. I don't think she ever got like an album of the year nomination for me, but I'm not even sure when I did. Like she's so cloudy for me, and now we will try to clarify that cloud.
I don't remember anyone ever mentioning her except Jason because it was so surprising to me because I would not expect Jason to like her at all, just the way she sings. But who knows? We'll find out here.
Yeah, I have no idea what to expect. Like I know Jason kind of likes her. Me and Jason were just talking before you got on, like, will Joe like her? Because she has like a little bit of like that Elizabeth Fraser thing, Cocteau Twins kind of thing going, but the music is much more abstract. Like, I don't know.
All right, let's see what happens. As we often do when we have more than 10 albums to deal with, we're going to rattle through chunks in the bottom. We're going to do our bottom 3 real quick, and then we'll do one at a time for our top 10s. Here we go. My bottom 3, number 13, And Björk is one of those artists that has a wide range of ratings for me. It goes from very low to very high. So number 13 for me is one of the soundtracks. It's Drawing Restraint number 9 from 2005. She traveled to Japan and studied Japanese music to make this. And I like the opener Gratitude, which is sung by Will Oldham, also known as Bonnie Prince Billy. But man, things go downhill pretty quickly after that for me. And it's an example of a soundtrack that doesn't work out of the context of the movie. You know, whatever value might be here, it's seems to be totally reliant on the visual, because I'm getting nothing out of this. Listening to it as an album was pretty excruciating. It's meandering, it's aimless. I thought it was completely uninteresting. Holographic Entry Point, that track, it was probably the low point of doing this channel. Absolutely hated it. Would be 0 stars, but I do like the opener, so I'm going a half a star on this one. I thought it was awful.
Come on. It's a sound. All right. No, fair enough. I mean, you come at it the way you want. That's fine.
All right, my number 12 is 2011's Biophilia. It's a record where I think the concept and the scope of the project just kind of suffocates the whole thing. I think there's maybe too much thought going into the execution of these apps that like went with each song, and maybe not enough attention paid to the songwriting. And I think Björk is guilty of this sort of thing in the latter part of her career, kind of a lot, but maybe nowhere more than here. I just don't think the songs offer too much. Her voice still sounds good. The tone of her voice is still very pleasant, and I think she's still a very strong singer at this point in her career. But emotionally, it seems to be going through the motions. I don't feel much passion in this. That sounds like a cram critique, but that's how I kind of feel about this record. Nothing about this record really draws me in. It doesn't captivate me. I so often, even on lesser records of hers, something about her voice really draws me in and makes her very interesting to me at the very least. And this record is the only studio record of hers that doesn't really have that at all. You know, most of her stuff usually isn't that hooky, but there's other things to hook you in. There's some production trick or a beat or some idea or lyric that makes it captivating and interesting. And this one, I just do not get it. I don't think it's very good. I have it at 1.5 stars. Then my number 11 is Utopia, which is supposed to be this like warm and optimistic record after Vulnicura, which was a breakup record. And so it has all these like flutes and harps and things. It's kind of like, you know, early 30s Disney movie type of music. You can picture like Snow White frolicking through a field. But Arca produced it. So there's also all these glitchy beats, and the two things are really at odds with one another. And I think the way it's mixed is not very pleasant. The flutes and things are so upfront and so loud and so harsh that I don't really think they achieve what they're intended to achieve. I don't know if they're overcompressed or what, but the flutes are pretty annoying on this record when they should be a highlight of the record. And then in addition to that, I think the songs just don't really strike me as anything very special. They are delivered with a little more passion than they are on Biophilia, but I don't think they're strong enough to survive the Arca treatment, you know, the harsh flutes, glitchy beats, and, you know, the mismatched feelings of the songs that like emotionally don't make sense with what's happening musically. So 2 stars for Utopia.
I'm not going to go quite as low as Jason did for my number 13. I got Drawing Restraint number 9 all the way up at 1 star. I agree. No one likes this song. The first song is pretty good. Kind of surprised that it wasn't Björk singing. Got Will Oldham. And everything else just seems like, I don't know, just an exercise in avant-garde Japanese. Like I don't know what she's going for here, and I just don't like it. I don't want to listen to it. I don't know where, like, how it matches up in the movie, like if it's supposed to paired with some cool visuals or something. it's not music really to me. It's just raw. So yeah. 1 star for Drawing Machine number 9. Number 12, I got Björk, the album. And she did this when she was, I don't even know, 8 or 9 or something. And it's a novelty, and I don't like it, but I don't want to speak ill of children. So I'm not going to say anything too negative about it. It's a curiosity. We'll say that. That's about as much as I can say about Björk, self-titled from 1977. It is cool though that she released this and then later became a famous singer. I think that's pretty badass, but there's no reason to listen to this ever. So 1.5 stars for that one. And my number 11 is going to be Utopia. Like, is it really that strange to have Utopia down at the bottom? I don't like Arca at all. I don't like his production. It is such a drop off from, like Nelly Hooper and Tricky and the 90s stuff, the early 2000s stuff. Arca he sucks, man. I hate his style. This is like the peak bleeps and bloops. It's just there's so many sound effects and like chimes. A song like Blissing Me, just it's such a mess that it's hard to listen. It's complete chaos. There's no melody at all. And it's a lot of work to get through this album.
Put in the work.
Utopia. What?
Put in the work. It's a lot of work. Put in the work.
Not worth it. Not with Arca running the show.
That's the problem with your generation. You don't want to work.
Utopia, the song, it's got those like medieval flutes, and it's just like awash in electronic flourishes and odd sound effects. And like I like the juxtaposition a lot of the time of that electronic and human, but I don't hear any human on this album. I just hear the electronic and sort of the annoying stuff. Body Memory, my favorite on here. I really like Björk's trills when she does the rolling R's. I find that really interesting and cool. But at this point in her career, I don't like Björk singing that much. The vocals still sound pretty good, but there's just like such a lack of any sort of melody in her vocals. Like she's going up and down, and she's just kind of singing like in the same 4 or 5 notes, and just nothing happens. It's just all avant-garde, amusical. And there's like no beats to any of this. Like Arca's beats are so lame that you can't like groove or dance or do anything to this except for just like listen and suffering. What little beauty is subsumed in a wash of glitchy effects and beeps and bloops galore. So 1.5, but I really think Utopia is like very much unique in its, I don't want to say like badness, but like unlistenability compared to even the albums around it. So I'll be much nicer after we get back to me.
All right. Well, if you're looking for humanity in a Björk discography, you're not going to find it. And that's what's great about her is she's just like this alien presence that's like you don't get it. But you're all right. The worst Björk album is that soundtrack that is not Dancer in the Dark, the movie no one's ever seen, Drawing Restraint number 9. And, I'm giving it 2 stars. I don't think it's bad. And this really just begs a better question. Like, should we be including these albums? Like, they're released as such as albums, but this album, much different than Selma songs for Dancer in the Dark, is made to just score a film. Like, so it's tough. Like, when you have it out of the context, is it a good listen from start to finish? Like, no, not really. Like, you get Matt Barney, not Matthew Barnaby, Joe, singing on the opener. And you get the Japanese influence. I don't know the movie, but there's nothing really to grab onto. It's mostly just sounds and moods. to affect a scene, which is the main media that's happening that we don't see just listen to the album. So I mean it's tough really scoring these types of albums, but I'm going to because she did the work and has some Japanese like influence on it, I guess. My number 12 is going to be her actual debut as an 11-year-old, Björk, 2 stars. Björk is never uninteresting, ever. So, the fact that this is 2 stars, it's childish. The music is cool. There is some cool musicality in it. Like there's some cool disco stuff, some cool 70s stuff. I think it's charming in a weird way. But like she's not getting to be the auteur that she really is. It kind of just seems like an album where they were like, hey, we got this kid who's 11 years old and kind of sing a little bit. Let's see what she can do with these songs. They're all covers. It's impressive, but like it's not really what you want out of Björk or she'll become. This one's gonna shock some people. My number 11 is actually from last year, Fossora, which Björk's really tough for me to kind of like encompass in an overall discography rating because by like Fossora, I'm kind of like, it's kind of Björk by numbers now. What those numbers are, like, who the fuck knows? Because she's so unique and so peculiar. But like, there's nothing on Fossora that's not really on another album to me, except the sound of her voice, which is kind of finally aged a little bit in an interesting way, not a bad way. So I'm kind of intrigued to see what her next album could be like. Like she has this weathered kind of sound in her voice, which for so long hadn't really changed at all. But I think it's kind of more of the same. I want a little bit more. There's no really new interesting ideas. Like all of her album are an experience, and this one is still an experience. Like I'm up to 2.5 stars. I think it's a decent album, but I don't think it's essential Björk. And like, like for standout tracks, like I like Ovule a good bit. None of the tracks are bad, but like there is some filler, like my Celia, or whatever it is. I don't know. This one just kind of seems uninspired. So those are my bottom 3.
All right. Yeah, the soundtracks are tough to decide whether or not we should include them. It should be a case by case basis, but then you run into people complaining, like you counted that, but why won't you count this? So what are we going to do? My number 10, we'll keep talking about Fossora. This was her pandemic record, came out in 2022. She described it as her mushroom record, whatever that means. Also has described it as her clarinet record, which that makes more sense. There's a lot of clarinet on it. She's also described it as her Iceland record, which I guess that makes sense too. It was partly inspired by the death of her mother. There are a few things I like about this record. I love her vocals on Ovule or Ovule, however you say it. I think the record on the whole sounds a lot better than Utopia did. I'll take clarinets over flutes any day of the week. Sonically, I think it's a pretty good sounding record, but there's still something missing here. The songs just don't grab me still in this later part of her career very much. The aim seems to be more to like express feelings through sound than songwriting, and I just don't think that connects quite as well with me. Allow is a pretty good song. Like I said, I like Ovule, but there's not a whole lot here. I think it's, I don't know. Yeah, kind of like Cram said, it's just kind of like inessential, and it feels like her records feel like they're trying so hard to be interesting at this point rather than just like making good songs and producing them in a way that's interesting. It feels like the aim is to make it interesting. So I don't know. 2 stars for me.
Okay, we'll just keep talking about it forever. Fossora last year, and when I listened to it last year, I liked it more. And I think that has to do with the fact that I hadn't listened to 11 other Björk albums in the same, week or day. And that kind of was a recurring theme throughout my listening. I feel like I would like them a lot more if they were like once a year. Like this is like a once a year type of record, like a little treat, a little something different. because it really falls outside of rock and pop and everything like that. It's not completely avant-garde, but it's just very weird. And when you pair that with like 11 other Björk albums, it's just like it's a lot. And when you listen to them in order when they came out, it's even worse. So I had it at 3.5 stars last year. I'm dropping it down to 3. I don't know really which one it is. But I do like her vocals. I think it's a lot better than anything on Utopia. And I just like the way she works, filling out the music with her vocals, because the music's very minimalistic oftentimes, but the double tracking and kind of how Kate Bush does with using her own vocals as like backing instruments that she can bounce off and sort of use. I find that really cool. There's some cool choirs. There's a lot of call and response and choral vocals and it's almost like medieval sounding sometimes. Sorrowful Soil is very gothic. I like Serpent with Feet, guest appearance on Fungal City. I think that's the best track on the album. His like R&B style guest vocals, I think just liven things up a lot, a little more playful, a little more human. And Björk's doing the rolling R's all over the place, and there's a lot of the clarinet and flute and tons of strings, violin, cello, and it's just all of it adds up to interesting sounds that don't really have, I don't want to say like they don't have a point, but it's just like music without a purpose or a focus or a direction. And I don't know, it just kind of grates on you throughout. And I like what I hear, but there's no songs. Like there's just not enough songs for me to really gravitate to and latch on to. And 3 stars for me. It might be a 3.5 star record. I'm not sure. It's hard to tell. I thought it was last year, but with all this Björk I'm listening to, it just didn't feel as good as the other albums. So I had to drop it down to 3, but I don't think it's a bad album. It's just unnecessary, unessential. I don't know.
She's really hard to pinpoint because her music is so different and so interesting. Like, so there's always that blanket over all of it. Like, you listen to her stuff, and if you're a fan of music, it's really interesting, and there's nothing else like it. But when you really break it down, it's hard to really know how you feel about it. My number 10 is Selma Songs, soundtrack to Dancer in the Dark, which is a film I'm not really confident talking about because I saw it when I was like 16, got it from DVD from the library when I was in high school, watched it once, probably went right over my head. I remember liking it, but I can't talk about it anymore. So like, yeah, like these soundtrack albums, you listen to it start to finish and you treat it like an album. This one's a lot easier to do than the other one because there are like actual songs, maybe some of her poppier songs like ever on this album. It's an album with a Tom York collaboration on it, which you think would send me to the moon, but I think it's good, but that song's not going to make my songs list tomorrow. Spoiler alert. I think Savalda is really cool. David Brown of Entertainment Weekly said that these are show tunes on ecstasy, and I absolutely love that phrasing. So good shout out there. You always got to give a good journalist credit when it's due. Yeah, I mean, Scatterheart is lovely. In the musicals is cool. Everything has like this kind of twisted, demented old Hollywood flair. 107 Steps is solid. I think New World is really cryptic and cold. So I think everything holds up on its own just fine. But I don't really know how to gauge this album because if it's like an album that's just like straight up Björk's good songs, kind of falls short because there's not enough of it and they don't seem quite fleshed out enough. If it's a soundtrack album, like it's really good. So, I don't know. It's somewhere in between. I've got it at 2.5. I think it's decent. It's not anything I really want to revisit again because I don't think it's essential Björk. Like if I go see Björk live and she doesn't play anything off of here, I'm not gonna be disappointed. So it's tough, it's impressive, and it's interesting, and that's always gonna be her like bottom line. Impressive and interesting. She's always gonna build from there, ground up. So yeah, that's my number 10. Selma Songs number 2.5. But like,
Oh.
is it? But is it three? Like, is it? It might be a good album. Like, I'm with Joe. Like, I don't. It's tough.
I think you're leaning a little too hard in the whole like soundtrack thing. I think it's coloring
Yeah,
your score a little too much on this one.
but as like an album listen, like it's got good songs. But like, if I didn't know it was a soundtrack album, I would listen to it and be like, there's something missing here. Like, I need something more. Like, I don't know. It's weird.
All right, my number 9. I'm crawling along still at 2 stars. I've got Medulla, how you say it, but I don't know. This one might split people. I'm not sure exactly. I think some people like this one a lot. For me, this is where like the wheels start coming off a little bit. It was an attempted break from electronic music, so she goes in this like mostly a cappella direction. So you've got like throat singers on this record and beatboxing and human trombone someone's credited with and choirs, and I don't know, there's a little bit of piano and programming, but for the most part it's human voices. And song for song, I think it's pretty hit or miss. Some of it is really beautiful and like organic sounding, and I think the concept of like getting away from electronic music works. But then there's other times where there's the beatboxing and it's done in such a way that it doesn't really feel that human. And I don't know that the concept of a more human approach really lands. Plus, it just sounds a little corny. I think that some of the beatboxing, especially on the third track of the record, I don't know. Some of it just sounds electronic, and the way her vocals are processed sound really distorted at times. And I just think it would have been even more interesting if she had gone further in an a cappella direction and didn't try to make the voices sound like electronic elements. I don't know. Some of the songwriting here, I think, feels a little undercooked too. Like the novelty of doing this a cappella record distracted her. Some of it feels more like experiments where she just like went into a vocal booth to see what would happen and messed around in there for a little while. And the songs just aren't really there. I think Who Is It is probably the best song, but I can't help but feel that song even would be better with different production and a different approach. I don't know. It's estimated that this record sold 1 million copies worldwide. So props to her for doing that with such an odd record. But I don't know. To me, it feels like she's out of ideas and like she's grasping at this a cappella concept as a way to like keep herself interesting. So I don't think she has much to say on this one. There's some cool moments, but it is not my favorite. So 2 stars.
All right. I'm gonna go with Biophilia for my whatever number we're on. 8, 9. We're only on 9. All right, so Biophilia, this is the one that was like an app as well as an album, and I don't really care. I didn't play the app, so I'm missing out on that. So it's another one where it's like it's paired with something else that we're not gonna talk about. Kind of just like Selma songs and Drawing Restraint number 9. This one has a lot of harp. It feels a lot like Medúlla, but you get the electronic textures and the instrumentation instead of the a cappella. This one's cool. It's got like this natural wonder to it, which is interesting. It's very like earthy. I mean, it's kind of like Fossora in that way as well. It's feels like a mushroom kind of whatever she's doing. It's very like Mother Earth. Like let's talk about plants and how it all goes together and everything like that. I don't really know what she's going for. I don't really care that much. I hate the earth, so I don't know if she's trying to do like a environmentalist message or whatever. I'm just I'm here for the songs, and the songs are hit or miss. There's some cool elements, but it's a little too like mellow and spiritual and kind of hippy dippy for me. I like the backing choir a lot on the Cosmogony. There's like this unhinged organ and wailing going on in hollow. It's almost like panic, and it's like it's stressful to listen to. It builds and gets heavier, like it's coming straight at you, which is a cool effect, but I don't know. I just need a couple more songs. Virus has like a nice little science lesson in there, and I think her vocals are quite pretty, but there's a lot of bleeping and blooping and tinkling, and it kind of wears thin by that point. I do like Mutual Core though. It's like one of her big vocal songs, and she gets like so powerful it's a little intimidating sometimes, and just totally takes over a song, which I like a lot at this point. Like I just don't like that electronic textures and sort of aimless, formless music behind her. Like I just need some type of direction on some of these songs. It's cool to listen to, but it's tough when you listen to this much Björk in a short period of time. And after Medúlla, and I'll give a little spoiler, which I really love her vocals there. Here they just start to like not do anything. Like there's no unexpected like melodies, and they're just sort of like modulating in the same unmelodic key just over it. Like they'll get loud and big, and there's just no melody to it. And it's kind of annoying because she has such a great voice and she can do so much, but just I don't know, the lack of any type of actual songs and songwriting at this point in her discography really starts to grind down at you. So I have it 3 stars. Like it's not bad, but I don't know. It's probably like a 3.5 in 2011, but this week it's a 3.
All right. I got a bunch of things to say before I go into my number 9. Joe kind of, I think, embody like with that summary said everything you need to know about Björk. I think she is a fantastic artist who's not a great songwriter. Like the best of her material is all about mood and being unique and having a voice. But she struggles at songwriting. I'm the biggest Björk proponent probably of the three of us, and I will say like her songs really lack journey, like from beginning to end of the track. Like she doesn't take you on the ride that she really needs to take you on. There's not a lot of emotional dynamic. There's not a lot of rise and fall. That's where she lacks for me from being like an all-time great to just someone who's like really fucking cool. And my number 9, I'm with Jason. I've got Medúlla, and I have almost the same review. I've got it at 2.5, and I almost want to give it at 3 because when it's good, it's really fucking good. But I think, like Jason was saying, this is kind of the point where she becomes a little bit less organic, and she knows what she has to offer, and she's going for it rather than just letting it kind of come out naturally, which was the beauty of her highlights before that. And I do like some of the post Medúlla stuff a lot, but I think on Medúlla she's in her head a little bit and she's letting her ego get to her. Like the songs are either really inconsequential and bare, like Show Me Forgiveness, or they're like really overthought and overcluttered. Like it really lacks a balance in between, and I think that's problematic for this album, which stops it from being good. And I'm not crazy about a lot of the production choices. I really don't like the backing, like robotic vocals on like Where Is the Line. The vocals on Yakura are beautiful. Like I didn't make a lot of notes about her singing because I kind of take it for granted, but I think she's a very good singer. She's very interesting. I'm with Jason. The best song on this album is Who Is It? Carry My Joy, easily. But like Old Britain, Submarine, kind of boring, kind of filler. I just don't think it's her best stuff. It's still interesting. Like she's never not going to be interesting. But I don't know. This album sounds like she was really trying to capitalize on all the momentum she had with all these great albums leading up to it and she was like aware, like, this should be my magnum opus, let's do it. And it just kind of like let out like a little bit of just like a balloon letting the air out. Nothing happened really. It's not terrible, but and it has some moments, but yeah, Medúlla, my number 9, 2.5.
We see eye to eye on Medúlla. I don't know that we see entirely eye to eye on her entire career. I think she has moments and had a nice run of great albums with great songwriting. So
For sure.
We'll see how this plays out as far as who's the bigger Björk proponent.
I have a Dead Swan gown in my closet I'll put on if I need to.
All right, my number 8 is the self-titled debut from an 11-year-old Björk. It's Björk. The opener called Erebadurgurin. I don't know. Was written by her stepdad, Savar Arneson. And it's kind of a banger. I think it's pretty awesome. It's real disco-y and dancey, but it's distinctly different from any American disco music of the 70s. Like the song title translates to Arab boy, so it has this like Middle Eastern flavor to it that is super cool, and her like little high-pitched voice coming piercing through, I think works really well for the track. The rest of the record, I don't know, there's some covers. She does a Stevie Wonder song. She does Fool on the Hill by the Beatles. She does Altamira by Edgar Winter. I don't know, they're fine. They're a little karaoke-ish, but, not bad. And then the rest of the songs, I think, or at least most of the other ones, are originals, but I don't know who's writing them, if they're all by her stepdad or like the guy that owned the studio or whatever. But I don't know. It's not bad. I think Björk herself sounds adorable throughout. There's definitely a charm to it. But artistically speaking, not a ton to offer here. It's just, a young girl singing some pop songs and, produced by the local Icelandic musicians. But it's cool for what it is. It's interesting to listen to. Once you've heard her other music, to go back to it and see what she was like as a child, it's pretty cool. So, not bad. 2.5 stars.
My number 8 is going to be Volta from 2007. This one, she did some collaborations. My boy Timbaland has a couple tracks on here.
Every time we talk about Timbaland, you say my boy.
Listen, Timbaland's special to me. All right, I love Timbaland. Man, the first 4 tracks on this album, I was listening through here, and I was like, oh my gosh, we're jumping right into 4 stars here. This is a killer album. Earth Intruders is awesome. I love Timbaland and Dange's production on it. Love the tribal drums, and it's just like a very visceral, heavy, big sound. Wanderlust is really cool as well. I love the way her vocals and the music sound like they're moving at like completely different speeds. It's like this propulsive electronic beat and like the slow, like operatic moving vocals, which is really cool juxtaposition there. You got Anhoni guest duetting, I guess, on the Dull Flame of Desire. Just a really great build to the song, and I think they work very well together. And then Timbaland comes back for Innocence. Got some swarming, like swooping production choices. It's not hip hop, but it has like some of that element to it. Very trippy and chopped up, and lots of starts and stops, and interesting electronic loops and samples. And then it just completely falls off a cliff. I really dislike almost every other track on here. It kind of just falls back into that same old Björk trap, where it's just dreary. It's got like this faux East Asian sound to it a lot. There's no melodies, and it's just like bleeps and electronic textures, and it's just very disappointing after what I think is one of the best runs of 4 stars in her whole catalog. So unfortunately, I still have it at 3 stars. But those first 4 tracks rule. So what could have been, I could have used maybe like 2 or 3 more Timbaland tracks on here, because I think they worked really cool together and did some cool stuff. And Unfortunately, they only have 2 songs together. So, missed opportunity for Björk and Timbaland, my boy. Timbaland, my boy, Timbaland.
I don't know how branches of boyhood work, but you're my boy. And if he's your boy, he's my boy. And Jason is our godfather. And then Todd is the godfather of godfathers. My number 8 is Biophilia, but I'm jumping up to 3.5. I think it's very good. That said, this album is a bit of a letdown on a personal note because like I get really excited when it starts because I think it's going to be like this weird stripped down almost like acoustic kind of like macabre kind of transient, like just her and her voice and the harp with a little bit of synth, her and her voice with the mandolin, a little bit of bass, and you get flourishes of that, but it never really goes all in. I kind of like expect a more bare bones effort from her, which is still an album I don't think she's ever produced, which I think could be really cool if she does it well. But I like love all of the sounds on this album. I like Moon as an opener quite a lot. I really like the ominous fearfulness of Thunderbolt, and I like how it kind of takes off and hits those big, deep bass kicks. So it does kind of those things I want, but it's all accompanied by the drum loop percussion, all the digitization and all of that. And I really like in that song how it kind of changes speeds and everything. And you get those kind of broken Jack in the Box kind of sounds like on Crystalline, very cool. Cosmogony is cool. You know, it's weird because every album is very different from one another to me because you're operating within Björk's spectrum. She's certainly always unique, but then sometimes, and this probably isn't fair to her at all, and this is the first time I've ever listened to all of her stuff straight through. And I'll listen to an album and I'll be like, man, I really wish she would try something new. But like everything she does is new and different than everyone else. So that's not really a fair thing to say to her because she's always different. But like, I'm like it's hard to tell Björk, like, yeah, get out of your shell a little bit because it's fucking Björk. Like, no one else sounds like Björk. But I kind of feel like that with Biophilia, which I still think is a very good album. I'm giving it 3.5. She's just such a hard artist to put her finger on. I think Hollow is really cool and weird. That synth part kind of reminds me of Spirits in the Material World by the Police. Like that. I love that. And this album kind of makes me want a Björk and like 80s weird Tom Waits collaboration. I think Virus is really cool. And apparently this album is kind of about the themes of like nature versus the economy and a point where the Icelandic economy was like crumbling. And I don't want to sound dumb, but like that all went way over my head. I think the album needs a little bit more pulse. But like Solstice is really nice at the end. I think it's a solid effort. Like so her effort on this album is solid. And she is always from a very unique soul and is good at expressing that. So it's automatically very good. Like it's almost like a lazy effort to me from Björk, but where she's coming from is always going to be cool and interesting. So I think it's almost great. That's how much I like Björk. Like she can be lazy, but if it's Björk and it's her voice, which it almost always is, it's going to be very good to me. So 3.5 Biophilia. Does that make sense?
Kind of.
No.
So this is where I'm moving up into the good albums. I've got no 3-star records. I'm going straight from 2.5 to 3.5. And I'm going with Vulnicura here, which I think is kind of a nice bounce back after Biophilia. I think there's a lot more heart to this record, dealing with the breakup from Matthew Barney, who is the person she wrote, that amazing kind of love letter of an album to with Vespertine. I think Stonemilker is an amazing opener. I think it's a great song. I think it's her best song since Vespertine. I love the strings on it. I think when her voice is kind of like swooping and dancing around these dramatic string arrangements, that's when she's really at her best. And maybe that song a little bit feels too much of a throwback to Homogenic, but I think it's a really great song, still a really good effort. And I think most of the songs here are pretty strong. The arrangements work. I don't love all the production, especially in the back half. Arca seems to like the influence of Arca seems to come in heavier in the back half of the record. And gets a little overly glitchy and clubby for the subject matter in the songs. But first half, I think, is really strong. History of Touches has some really interesting lyrics. I don't think she gets enough credit for her lyrics, but she has some songs that have like sensational lyrics. Like I said, the record's a little front-loaded. The first 4 songs are super strong, though. And, you know, after the disaster of Biophilia, I'll take a front-loaded record that's, you know, good. I'd call this a good record. 3.5 stars, Vulnicura.
Well, it's also mine, but I'm not quite. I cannot get to 3.5 stars because I just do not like Arca at all. But the first couple songs, pretty much the same things exactly to say about it as Jason did. It's kind of weird. We're on a similar wavelength here. Stone Milker, I think, is a masterpiece. Björk's vocals could milk emotion from a stone. It's damn true. The strings are just right. It has this nervous, unsettled energy in the music, but Björk's singing is like super, almost like unnaturally calm and determined. It's you get a lot of that in this album, that dichotomy, that juxtaposition between like the human emotion in her vocals and those glitchy electronic beats. And I think it works really well in Stone Milker Lion Song, which is really got that like pitch shifting computerized beats. It's very cold, and but her vocals are just so good, so human and emotional, a little more like tethered to earth, instead of like Biophilia, where it was tethered to earth but like in an inhuman sort of like organic. Now it's like human emotion again. I agree with Jason again on the lyrics. On History of Touches, maybe my favorite in the whole catalog. And you get like those super alien sounding synths and that like super incredibly personal lyrics. And like that's what I want to hear. Like that's what I want Björk to be doing. And it works so well on those 3. And then I don't know, Arca takes over, and I don't like Black Lake or Family at all. That's 18 minutes. And the songs seem almost like the same song. Like it's just like very sparse build into kind of like maybe an emotional climax on the back half, but they're so long. Black Lake's 10 minutes, Family's 8 minutes. And Not Get, Adam Dance, Mouth Mantra are all six plus, almost, you know, a couple or 8 minutes. And it just kind of loses me. I lose like that humanity. And I don't know, maybe I wasn't into the lyrics at that point because it's just sort of dragging. And it was a shame because, again, kind of like with Volta, you have like this incredible start, and then to me it just falls apart with all the electronics. Not Get is kind of cool. Like it sounds like it was recorded backwards or something. I'm not really sure. I didn't look into it because I didn't like it that much to really like research it. Mouth Mantra, you know, Quicksand, like they're cool textures, but they're not songs. Like I need more songs here, and I'm let down. It just gets way too avant-garde after this first couple of amazing songs, and I just got tired by the end of it. So I'm still at 3 stars. I wish I liked it more because it starts off so strong, but couldn't deal with Arca and her production.
All right, my number 7, I've got Volta, and I'm at 3.5. For me, means very good, almost great. I love Björk. What can I say, Jason? I think Earth Intruders is really cool. I love the drum machine shuffle on it. I don't have a lot of notes about her as a singer, but I love her cadence, and I love her enunciation, and it might be like in the English translation from like the way she says words is so unique and everything. Like, it's so cool. I love the synth sounds, especially that breakdown part in that song. Even at the end, like, I love those like seaside boat kind of noises. I love the wild rhythm and Wanderlust. The horns and stuff on Full Flame, dot dot dot, are great, but she's so unique. I absolutely, I don't think she benefits from guest appearances at all. Like, it only happens a little bit in her catalog, but when she brings in other people, like, it's not needed. She already has such a unique perspective. Like, I don't want it cluttered with other people coming in. Innocence is great. I get like some big like Trent Reznor kind of vibes on that song. But I also really like how it kind of softens up towards the back half and you get those clap tracks and all of that. So I just kind of love her like art pop kind of perspective on how she's like sometimes like even in the middle of a song, it'll be like this song is really catchy. Oh, no, it isn't. Like now it's like weird jazz fusion avant-garde poetry thing. Like she'll just change it up. Like she has no inhibition. She's not tied down to anything. She's always just gonna do what she wants to do. And I think on this album it's really prevalent. The sounds on here are just like this beautiful tapestry, very pastoral at times for her, but like this visceral kind of punch, like in I See Who You Are, and then in like Vertebrae by Vertebrae, you get kind of those vibes. And then you get a song like Pneumonia, and this all happens in the middle of it, and you get like this luminescent kind of serenity behind it. Very cool. And then toward the end, you get Declare Independence, which is like this super awesome, like just chaos club sounding like punk statement. I don't know what Volta is missing, but it's missing something for it to be great. So I only have it at 3.5, but I think the elements are there and the diversity is there. Maybe just like some of her best tracks, maybe some of like her beauty and her best singing. Like I think when she doubles down on one thing as a singer, where she's like, this album's gonna be beautiful or this album's gonna be mean, she can really sell it. And this album maybe not go all in on one thing. That might be what hinders it a little bit, but I still think it's really good. So Volta, I've got a 3.5.
All right, that is my number 6. I also have it at 3.5. This was her only US top 10 album. I remember thinking that this sucked when it came out. I've been listening to her releases as they came out pretty much since probably Vespertine was around when I started listening to her. So and then going back to it this week, I have no idea why I thought it was so bad, because I don't have a problem with much here. I think most of the tracks are pretty cool. Earth Intruders, I like it a lot. Wanderlust, I think, is also pretty good, although I think maybe that one gets a little overwhelmed by the beat, but still a good song. Anoni appears on a few tracks. Love her voice. I think it pairs well with Björk's. The beat on Innocence, probably the best thing Joe's Boy ever did. Really cool track. Yeah, like I said, there's nothing here I really don't like, and you know, listening to it now, I'm not sure what I didn't like about it then. It's definitely not as focused as Vespertine and Homogenic, but I don't think that's the point this time around. As she said, she just wanted to make a really fun, full-bodied, and really up record, and I think she succeeded in that. I also do maybe agree a little with Cram that she could have even gone further in that fun direction and maybe had a few more tracks done by Timbaland even. I think Earth Intruders and Innocence are you know, probably some of the better tracks here. So I don't know, maybe a little bit it feels like a step back in some ways, you know, for an artist that's usually so forward thinking. That this one, you know, seems kind of just like try to get back to some of the sounds from like Post and stuff maybe a little bit. So I don't know, I could see listening to it and being disappointed that it's not like this major statement or like a major reinvention, because maybe that's what you want every time from a Björk record. But for what it is, I think it's pretty well done. I don't really have any problems with it. I think it's a good record, 3.5 stars.
Like most things, needs more Timbaland. My number 6 is going to be it's true, Selma Songs. The soundtrack, I think, is a pretty good record. I got it up to 3.5 stars. We are entering good, but still probably not going to listen to it ever again. But still good. whatever quote Cramser said about what it was. Who was it?
It was David Brown from Entertainment Weekly said they were show tunes on ecstasy.
I wrote down Basquiat Disney songs, and it's just like this like mad like once you get past Overture, Savalda is just like this total chaotic energy. It's just overwhelming madness. You got like the sawing and the drilling at the factory sounds, and it's very like innocent and childlike a little bit, like a fairy tale, and it's kind of just goes crazy with these weird you know energy, because it's not like a children's thing at all, but it has that energy to it or whatever. So I think it's very cool. It's a very interesting sound. And it's pretty. It's a good song as well. It's not just sort of insanity going on. I think the debut, the duet with Tom York, a little dippy, a little boring. I don't like Tom York as a duettist usually. I didn't like him with PJ Harvey that much either. I can't really think of any times where I like him kind of, but it's like bringing in someone much more famous than you, and it's just like he overwhelms everything he does and sort of takes away from the original artist. So don't love that one. But I think all the other tracks are pretty good. Scatterheart and Musicals, 107 Steps. Like they have that same fairy tale like energy to them, a little darker maybe, but it's just something can't quite put my finger on. Maybe that it's only 32 minutes, maybe that it sounds more like songs despite it being a soundtrack. I don't think you need the visuals at all really to enjoy it. I think New World is a big triumphant culmination of everything, a big climax. You got the orchestration, sort of the uplifting tune behind it. Feels very final, the ending of the fairy tale, the closing of the book. So I thought it was a pretty cool album. It's nice and light, and despite like I've only read about Dancer in the Dark, but I know it's like incredibly dark and harrowing and sort of like I don't know. I'm not a big Von Trier fan. I haven't really seen much of his stuff, so I'm sure it's horrific in many ways. But Selma songs, it's kind of nice and uplifting and Disney-esque. I don't know. And short, that was good. 32 minutes, 3.5 stars.
All right. I feel like this is where I will lose the general public, lose the two of you. A lot of loss coming here for me. Number 6 is Vespertine, which I have a 4 stars. So I think it's great. My 4 stars is great. I think there are 6 great Björk albums. I'm a big Björk fan. I think Hidden Place is beautiful. I love the like melody hook on the synth strings. I think by this time it's very apparent that she and Tom York are very fond of one another. Cocoon is very like he could sing Cocoon and put it on Amnesiac and Kid A and you wouldn't skip a beat. And like vice versa. Like you could put the song Kid A on one of her albums and like ipso facto, like very much just like artists playing off one another, which a lot of elderly people don't give a lot of newer generation, we're saying newer generations like this 20 years ago, but like credit off of like, yeah, in the 60s and 70s, there was a whole community of artists. It's like, well, there still was like in the late 90s, early 2000s, you just didn't like it. So like, but it was happening. Like, let's be honest. I think this album is way more at peace than a Homogenic. It's very dreamy, it's very serene, but it has like that busy production, like an Undo, very good song. There's something really sad and beautiful about how that song ends. Pagan poetry is amazing and darker, but like childlike. there's just like the feelings you get from these albums are very peculiar. Like it's very sweet and innocent, but complex. Like on the verge of like these profound realizations. And it comes across in the musicality too. Like you get these kind of twisted dollhouse feels. Heirloom is really cool. I love how she talks about her hoarse throat and swallowing the glowing lights. Like Jason was saying, doesn't get enough credit as a lyricist. Like, just tremendous with words. Very fever dream like. I love it. Unison is great. I think it might be her best lyrical album. I just think it. I don't know. I don't know what it lacks to be in my top three. It's my number 6. She's such a friggin' hard artist to put my finger on. It's all instinctual with my ratings. And it's my number 6. So I still think it's great. I think she has 6 great albums. I really do.
You keep saying that, but I don't know if I'm buying it.
I don't care where you're buying. Your money's no good here.
I want to feel it. Sell it to me.
He's saying it like he's trying to convince someone. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know who you want to believe so bad that you love Björk, but
Nobody. Like Björk, I'm in it for me.
okay. My number 5 is where I go up to 4 stars. And this too may be controversial. I don't know. But I'm going with Post in the 5 spot. And Post is a record that I think has some killer tracks, some really great songs and performances on it. But I don't think, I mean, I do really like it a lot, but I don't think it quite comes together as an album quite as much as the other stuff in her classic period. It's almost as if she like tried to one up the eclecticism of debut and maybe took it a step too far. The opening though, Army of Me into Hyper Ballad, is a heck of a 1-2 punch. I think both of those songs are amazing. Then you get Modern Things, which kind of changes the vibe a little, and then you get It's Oh So Quiet, which completely like yanks you out of the mood you were in, and then it drops you right back into an electronic track, and where on debut I feel like there was more of a melding of styles, which was really interesting, and here it just kind of jerks you around from one thing to another. So here individually, I like almost every track. I think the songs themselves are very cool, but side by side as an album, don't think it works quite as well as her best stuff. I don't think it's quite as clear of an artistic statement as the records that I have ahead of it. So still very good. I like almost every track on it. Like I said, great songs, very good album. Not quite a great album, just because of the way it's paced and the way it flows. And so there you go.
Okay. Well, I don't know if I believe that either from you.
You're in a state of
stars.
disbelief. Like you're just not having it.
I don't know. You guys keep giving these high stars, but then it's just like, well, I don't really like this or this or this.
Okay.
So I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah,
I don't
you
care.
don't know. Be happy in
Number
your ignorance.
5.
You don't know.
My number 5. I know everything. My number 5 is going to be Medúlla, which I don't know why you guys didn't like this. I think this is incredibly cool. Mostly a cappella. Just the layers and layers of her vocals, guest vocals, beatboxers. It's super icy. It's super cold. It's robotic. It's not really electronic so much because it's mostly vocals, but it sounds, it doesn't sound human in many cases. You got some cool guest stars on here: Robert Wyatt from Soft Machine, Mike Patton, Tagak, the Inuit throat singer, on a couple tracks, Razel, Shlomo, a bunch of cool dudes. And this one was inspired by paganism and the idea of returning to a universe that is entirely human without tools, religion, or nationalities. As Björk said that. She said a whole bunch of weird stuff about it. One of the record to be like muscle, blood, flesh. We could be in a cave somewhere and one person would start singing and another person would sing a beat and then the next person sing a melody. And you could be kind of happy in your cave. It's quite rootsy, which is insane talk. Maybe something was lost in translation there, but I get it. It's just like primal. And there's some of the coolest stuff I've ever heard on here. Oceana. It's got this like beatboxing and the swarm of vocals from the London Choir. It's just they're like swooping and shrieking, and it's just some of the coolest vocal work I've ever heard in a song. It reminds me, and a lot of this album kind of reminds me of the way Kate Bush would use her vocals as texture. Of course, I got to mention Kate, my girl, Kate Bush. How 1 hour in, Kate Bush, yep. And it's just nothing like you've ever heard before. And I think I appreciate it because of its lack of the electronic elements. It's more human, it's primal. And it's just really interesting to me. And at first time I heard it, I did not like it. I thought this was like the most boring thing I ever heard in my life. And then I kind of grew to appreciate it, just especially the arrangements and the way Björk kind of leads the choir, and her arrangements and everything that she does. So I'm at 3.5 stars. I think it's one of those like must listens because it's just so unique and different and interesting, even if it's not like entirely up my alley. I do just sort of wonder at like her talent level on this is so extreme that it's just like, oh.
I think that is admirable of a critique from Joe. My number 5, I've got Debut, 4 stars. I think it's great. And this one is so different. Like, to me, of all of her albums, this one stands out the most because it has all of her texture, all of her inhibitions, but it's still filtered through that early 90s kind of like dance and like house music kind of filter. It's so interesting to me because you get a little bit of synth pop, you get a little bit of all of this stuff. It leads off with human behavior, which I think is great. It's such a cool song. It's written from the perspective of an animal, like if an animal was a zoologist talking about humans and like how weird we are and how disconnected we are from the natural world, which is true. And she does it with like this weird, like extraterrestrial kind of primal sound with this tribal beat that's like from a different planet. It's so cool. There's so many different aspects on this album of influences from jazz fusion to experimental to pop to house music to synth pop to like art house. It's so cool. Yeah, I just think this album's got everything going for it. It all comes together in like this very individualistic, like a tour pop style. It's like this big mashup into her, like her pop mind. Like by this time, she's what, like 24, 25. It's like all of this stuff she liked listening to, and it's just mashed up in her head, and it comes out in this chaos of like a slushy. I think Crying is a great example of this. The mix is very thin, which I don't mind. Like that's kind of just how it was at the time. There's very little bass, and I like it. I love her vocals. Like we have not talked a lot about her vocals because we're kind of taking it for granted, but she's a very cool, stylistic, angelic kind of voice. And I think the songs are filled with so much wonder and are so dreamy, but the dream is like this quick dream on like the verge of becoming a nightmare. It's so cool. I think on this album specifically and in her later work, you can hear like specifically, like you follow the channel, the shit I fucking like from like 2010 on. It stems from this early Björk stuff, like Zola Jesus, Grimes, MIA, like all of this stuff, Blonde Redhead. It comes from this. And you got to give her credit for it. Like we always have that argument, like, is it good or is it influential? I don't know for this, but I'm going 4 stars on here. Dogs give me a toy. So good. But I think the songs are cool because it's like this kind of psycho party that you're like invited to in her head. But if you feel it, you feel like you're invited, and it's so cool. One Day is really cool and icy and has like this Euro house kind of party style. And she does kind of like this jazz fusion, San Francisco kind of like beatnik style. But which I was kind of alluding to before, I think the problem with these songs, and even in her best material through the 90s and early 2000s, is her songs don't take you on a ride. Like, you get the feeling and the style right off the bat. And like, that's kind of, and it's great, but that's kind of where you are from start to finish. And I think that's kind of her problem as a songwriter. Not saying she doesn't have great songs, but like if she were an immaculate songwriter, you would feel it in the songwriting from start to finish, not just from the feeling, like the arc of the song, the emotionality of the writing would take you. And it doesn't always, and it happens on this album.
Pretty damning critique right there of her whole songwriting. Was that the debut of your dog, Ramsey?
That was a dog I am dog sitting. I do have a baby boy, 4-month-old golden retriever mix who has not been on camera yet.
All right, my number 4 is Selma Songs, the Dancer in the Dark soundtrack, or as I call it, the good soundtrack in this discography. I think it works pretty darn well as a standalone album. I had never heard this one before, one of the few new listens for me this week. And I think it's interesting that a lot of the versions on this record are altered from the versions that appear in the film. I think they changed some of the lyrics, and there's a few vocalists that are swapped out from the singers in the movie. So I don't know exactly the entire reasoning for why they changed things, but it feels to me like they put some real consideration into making it a great album experience. And I think the changes work because I enjoy this record pretty much from start to finish. I've seen it all. The track with Tom York is great. I love the orchestration. I think the orchestra on this record sounds phenomenal. It's so well recorded. That is probably my favorite part of this record, is those big orchestral arrangements. I think they were arranged by Vincent Mendoza. Björk's also credited as an arranger too, so I'm not sure how much of it she actually did herself as well. It is original music for a film, but it's still songs, and there's still melody and lyrics, and it's not, the ambient kind of whatever was going on Drawing Restraint. And it just kind of blends like this old Hollywood sound with more modern, forward-thinking rhythms and production. And I think it's really well done. I think her singing on it's great. And yeah, it just sounds really, really good. It's just a great recording. So 4 stars for Selma Songs.
All right. I'm still in 3.5-star territory with my number 4. I got Vespertine. I don't know. This was a little disappointing after Homogenic. And I don't know. This is sort of where she starts to lose me here in the 21st century. No. Yeah, 21st century. Vespertine, 2001. There's just a lack of melody here for me. You got the electronic elements. And it's hard to talk about this one in my rating for it without sort of giving away Homogenic, but it's not that. It has some of like the iciness. There's a lot of orchestration, waves of harp and clavichord and choirs that provide like that beautiful element to soften the digital blooping and bleeping elements. Her voice is very good. But there just doesn't seem to be melodies that are very strong anymore. And it sort of happens here. Everything sort of waxes and wanes and just lacks melodic intent. And there's no like journey to any of these songs. It's just sort of what you hear is what you get. And I do think there was journey before this. There's some very pretty songs, Harm of Will. Got this trembling strings and the soft piano and the evocative imagery. And she wanted to create an intimate domestic sounding album, purposely created thin and icy so that they would sound good when downloaded and played on a computer, which I think is just a terrible reason to make songs that sound that way. Basically sabotage her own production because she wanted them to sound good on computers in low bit. I don't know, it's interesting. I like the lyrics a lot. It's just not that memorable. And I don't even know why it's my number 4, to be honest. I'm talking really shit on this album. So there must have been enough like beauty in it for me to have it up here at number 4. So I'm not sure. Maybe I didn't write like the good parts. I only wrote the negative criticisms. So I'll have to come back to this one. So 4, Vespertine, 3.5 stars.
Okay, so you get it when you were saying I wasn't sounding convincing. Is like, for me, like, it's already Björk, and Björk is awesome and unique, and like we're critiquing her albums, but like, yeah.
But I'm only at 3.5 stars, so I have the hesitancy built into the ratings. Like you guys are like 4.5 stars, and you're kind of talking
Yes.
bad on the albums.
Well, no, I'm saying like the strength of her merit is always gonna be those things. Like she's unique, she has an amazing like singer voice, she has an amazing auteur voice. She sounds like no one else in the world. She's unique. So like, granted, like I'll give a 3.5 like I did a few rounds ago and not sound enthusiastic, but like I'm already saying she's amazing, and I'm trying to downgrade why this album isn't quite as amazing.
I suppose. I just don't think the uniqueness is worthy of like a 5-star base, and then you kind of chip away at it. Like,
Fair
I'm
enough, but I do. I think she's such an amazing artistic presence that you automatically start up here and then you kind of critique down here. Like I don't think anyone starts as high as she does just from artistic presence as she does. Like there are very few people.
I could just use a couple more songs, to be honest.
Fair enough, but I'm just trying to tell you where I'm coming from with the way this video is being presented. All right. So I feel like things have been bulked together and a little bit situated, except for this one. My number 4 is Utopia, which you guys both had very low, and I think it is great. I've got it at 4 stars. I know it's like this stupid Target brand poster thing to say everything, but this thing friggin' explodes with everything. It's sensational. And that's like the point, is like your senses on fire. And I love it. I love the way she does it. It's lush, it's gorgeous, it's fireworks, it's auditory, it's feeling, it's sadness, it's happiness, it's joy, it's melancholy, all at once. I don't know how she manages to do it, but she does it all with like this symphonic kind of like kaleidoscope of sounds and feelings, and just lets it all explode in this 4-minute little symphony. She's brilliant. Joe was riffing on Blissing Me. Dude, it's magical. The harp comes in, it's so majestic. It sweeps you off the earth. I think this is simply her prettiest album. I think it's easy to overthink Björk's albums. This one is her prettiest album. Everything seems so pretty. I love how in the gate it opens up. You get this feeling of like exploration and like this ancient hidden cave. And like you guys, probably more than me, like focus more on the songwriting critique and all of that. I will always be more about the feeling and the sensation for the most part. I mean, there are exceptions. And like she's just never going to be about that, which ironically is my critique of her. Is like she needs a little bit more of that. So, take it for what you will. But like the title track has like this enchanting like woodwinds aspect into it. There's just something so pure and beautiful and comforting about this album. Body memory is great. It's not a perfect album. Like I've only got 4 stars. Like the sound and the feel of it is like a 5-star gem for me, but it misses the mark on a lot of things. Like features creatures, I think is out of place. I like courtship, but it's kind of awkward. I do like the woodwinds in it, but just like her vision of like this ornate symphony and digitized grooves and her profound, like dreamlike voice with this poetic nature of like statement behind it. It's great. The album feels like a score to a movie that hasn't been made, just in her head. It's not without its problems. It's definitely bloated. It's like 77 minutes, way too long. I'll give you that. When you get a song like Sue Me, it comes just in the right amount of time to give it a little bit of bite. So it has a good flow. And like, I don't know if she has instincts to do mainstream pop. And if she does, thank you for rejecting it. And if she doesn't, thank you for being so pure. Because like she could easily buy into doing more mainstream sounding stuff to at least get on like an iPod commercial, like in 2008. But she never gave into that. Never. You got to give her that as an artist. So, yeah, my number 4, I think it's great. Utopia, 4 stars.
Actually, she did pair up with Apple for her Biophilia apps or whatever. So,
Well, she probably thought it was for a legitimate Apple. She probably didn't even know about the tech company. She probably was just like, I love Red Delicious.
All right. My number 3 is Debut, which was her first international album and her first recording after leaving the Sugarcubes. It draws on a lot of electronic and house music and trip hop, genres that I typically don't care for, but I think her vocals on this record are just so captivating, and I think the songwriting here just seems to transcend the genres. Very unique. A song like Venus as a Boy, kind of trip hoppy, but those strings just make it feel almost like 60s Baroque pop in a way. You have got like these very disparate sounds rubbing up against one another, but it's done in such a way that it all flows together and fits together really well. You've got like Someone in Love, which is just voice and harp, which goes into Big Time Sensuality, which couldn't be more different. But you've got this long fade out at the end, so it kind of leads you right into the next track, and it works way more seamlessly than the tracks on Post, which kind of pull you in different directions. Her vocals on Big Time Sensuality are just remarkable. So much personality on display. You also got jazzy elements on a number of tracks here, like Aeroplane and Anchor Song. It's very eclectic, but it comes together in a very interesting way. I think it's a very cool album, has a really unique vibe to it. I think the way that she brings in the different influences and kind of melts everything down into one sound that's cohesive is super cool. So very good record, 4 stars for Debut.
all right. I'm also doing Debut for number 3. Still 3.5. It's super close to 4. It's probably 4. I can go to 4. I'm gonna go 4, actually. I'm gonna raise it up because it's definitely better than Vespertine. So this is her debut, not counting her actual debut back in 77. And it's just like, you can tell how unique and interesting she is right off the bat. She's got this incredible voice and, so agile, so nimble, so like untethered. And like, she's basically like, her vocals are like it's hard to explain. No one else ever, I don't think, has vocals like her where they sort of like don't follow the rules of music. It's just like, I'm gonna go here and I'm gonna zip here and I'm gonna go down here. It just like doesn't even like compute. You can't even like wrap your mind about it. And even on the debut, he's already pulling this kind of like insane stuff. So that's really cool. Like that's the best part. That's why I like Björk a lot. The music itself, she teams up with Nelly Hooper, who works. I think he worked after with Massive Attack. He might have been in Massive Attack. I'm not sure how that all worked. So you have like this very cold house Euro trip hop kind of flavor to it. And it's not quite as interesting and unique as her voice, at least not yet. You got some of that orchestration on Venus as a Boy that works well, kind of contrasting with the sparseness of the drums and the bass. Like Someone in Love is really cool. It's got that huge just harp sound everywhere. It's almost a lullaby. And she's, this is where I think her voice really just like becomes that like meteoric, like shooting star level pull. Because she's, doing like this beautiful little lullaby. And at the end, she does that like little yelp when she goes up the register. And it's just like a thing you've never heard anyone else do. And it's just so cool. I don't love the lack, I don't know, there's a lack of hooks, a lack of choruses. We got a little bit of like the danciness with Big Time Sensuality in One Day. You got some random horn parts coming through in Aeroplane, a Stream of Consciousness singing, very dynamic, just incredible singing, but the melodies just, I don't know, they're not quite giving the lift that I need when I listen to, Björk sing. I need a little bit more. I like when the orchestration is heavy because it does provide that melodic counterpoint. And the drum and bass stuff, it's kind of like with Massive Attack. I like it, but I don't love it. I'm never gonna love it. Like it's just too cold, too Euro. It's a great debut. You can already tell she's a great artist. She has tons of vision, her own style, a one-of-a-kind voice, an unlimited range, that slippery, agile, nimble, just uniqueness to it. And I think the only thing that really holds it back is that London Euro trip hop sound. And unfortunately, she kind of makes her makes that her world and her sound. But I wish she didn't sometimes. But you can't deny the talent and the quality that's there. So yeah, we'll do 4 stars. Fine.
We've been doing this so long that I have like an empathy, and just like this total understanding of where you come from. Like, I'm like, yeah, Joe giving 4 stars for there. I'm like, well, like this is what Joe can give, and he's giving it. My number 3 is gonna be Post, and it comes out a lot heavier. You get those big stylized kind of snare drums smashing away at you, almost like a mix between like that heavy pop kind of glazed shoegaze kind of sound. It's very much like mid 90s, and I love that. Like it's a mix of like house music mixed with kind of like the spiritualness of grunge and all of this stuff. And she's doing like less of that girly kind of dream world element. It's much more powerful. I think Army of Me is really good. It's a lot bassier. Like on the debut, it's very thin. You get a lot of bass here. You get some trip hop kind of feel, which, like Joe said, is never going to be his favorite sound. And that's just kind of a thing. Like, if you watch our channel, like, there are just things that are not going to be our favorite sound. End of story. But, like, I really like Hyper Ballad. I think the feel is so good in this album. It's totally unique. And then you get maybe the hidden gem of the 90s, which is Oh So Quiet. It's Oh So Quiet, which is so fucking incredible. Like, it's so artistic. Like, the little bells, the unexpected big band thing comes in. Like, I don't know if there's a track that's just more pure musicality enjoyment than someone has of her doing this song. Like, it's just like she knows what she likes. She likes this old big band swing kind of feel, like this charming Disney element, but she has chaos in her mind, and she's going to twist it all together poignantly. Like, she's going to do a little bit of this, and then she's going to let herself rage, and then she's going to calm down. And then she's like, it's just a fantastic song. I think it's amazing. Like, absolutely amazing the way she does that. And it's easy to mess up, and she doesn't at all. I think that song is just fantastic. I think the second half of this album's a bit weaker than the first, and the problems I have with her as a whole still are prevalent. Like, it's hard for her to have a masterpiece for me because I don't think her songs take the right emotional journey. Like, they're always a little bit more about style and feel. I Miss You is cool. I love the percussion on it. 4 stars. I think it's great. It's my number 3.
Right. Will Cram get out of 4-star land? We'll see, but I am getting out of 4-star land right now with Vespertine, 4.5 stars. Sounds to me like Joe needs to go back to this one. Him saying that it's missing melody does not compute for me. I think it's one of her most beautifully melodic records. Cold, icy, minimal electronic production. But thematically, it's about love and sex and her new relationship. And I don't know, it's almost counterintuitive. You would expect with those themes for it to be like this warm, like encompassing type of sound, but kind of works against itself, which is kind of a cool approach. And I think it works. It's very intimate, like on Cocoon, that beat. It's like this tiny skittering, bubbling thing, but it feels so up close. It's almost like ASMR. And then her voice is like real small and right up front. And, it's not the belting that she's doing on Homogenic. The artistic vision on this record, I think, is super clear. And I think the execution is basically perfect. Maybe doesn't quite have the standout tracks of the previous record, but her vocals on tracks like Pagan Poetry and Aurora and Sun in My Mouth, I think, are stunning. I really like Heirloom too. That synth bass is super cool. And I think there's like some electric piano in there too, which warms up the sound a little. At I think just the right time on the record. And I don't know. Yeah, electronic minimalism, not my preferred sound, but from Björk, you get some of those strings added in, and I just think it's so well done. Great songs. Her vocals are impeccable. So I think it's a great record, Vespertine, 4.5 stars.
Don't see it. Don't hear it. My number 2, I'm gonna go with Post. I'd be really disappointed if we all don't have the same one. I think we all will, right? Yeah, we will. We're not idiots here. Number 2, Post from 95. A little more esoteric, a little more into like the icy trip hop vibe. You have Tricky coming in to produce a couple tracks, Graham Massey, Nelly Hooper again. So it's really leaning into that, the sound of, house music. But, you have some other stuff coming in. You got some techno and IDM and, jazz and industrial and ambient and experimental music. And it feels definitely more substantial, I think, than debut. I feel like she's really come into her own as far as the songwriting goes. I think there's more actual songs here. I think a lot of these songs do have a journey to them, and it's always kind of pulsing and pushing the beat forward from the production side. Army of Me just has that absolutely brutal groove because it, of course, steals the drums from When the Levee Breaks, and that literally just makes everything sound good. And anytime you need just like a brutal drum groove, you sample that. Hyper Ballad's awesome, just an incredibly moving vocal performance. I love the lyrics. I think the lyrics on this album some of her best work. She sells, herself, and she sells the lyrics, I think, really well with her vocals. Got a little glitchy, little house, little Europop combo in there. Modern Things, it's not really a song, but she has like this Viking power in her vocals, which really just like overwhelms everything, and it's really cool. It's Oh So Quiet is great. It's twinkly, soft, almost childlike, playful tune, cover of a, I don't know, 50s song, I believe. Isabel, I'm not sure exactly what, has this great Euro house style, but it's not cold at all. There's these big starstruck strings that come in, and Björk has like these very warm vocals on it, which is really pretty. And what else we got? Enjoy's great. I like production on it a lot. I think production from Hooper and Tricky and Massey does a better job of being unique here. The first, on debut, it kind of sounded like sort of Massive Attack, maybe to a fault a little bit, like that house style. And this, I think there's a lot more variety in everything, and just more fitted to Björk's unique style. That's about it. I mean, I just think all of these songs are pretty darn good. I think her singing is very good. The coldness of the production and the warmth of her vocals often make a nice juxtaposition. You got the really good singles in Army of Me, Hyper Ballad, and Isabel. So it kind of just has everything that I'm looking for in an album. And it's 4 stars. It could be higher, but a lot of Björk. But yeah, very good album.
All right, my number 2, I've got Vulnicura, whatever. Tremendous strings. The strings are everything on this album. It's so friggin' awesome, the symphonic quality. And I just think it's so beautiful and so bittersweet. I love it. And that's kind of what she needs in a way, is to like channel all of this complex emotion and just like this is my new dog right here. It's such an emotional album. Like, you got Stonemaker is breathtaking. Like, the way she doubles down on just the simplicity of the strings going against her vocals. And that's kind of something that no other album has for the most part. It's just this simplicity. You know what I mean? Like, everything is like busy. Like, there's busyness behind everything, which is usually really good. And for this one, for me, it's just kind of way more natural. Like, History of Touches is great. I think it has a lot of like those ghostly 80s synth qualities that you see in like a William Hurt movie. All of these just soft little touches. Black Lake is really powerful. These songs are all about feelings, and they resonate tremendously because they breathe really well. And they're wound really tight. Like, none of these emotions are simple. Like, the songs aren't simple, but they're just tightly wound, these complex emotions, and they explode when they need to. The album is about breakup, which is probably a number 1 all-time like reason to make an album. Like, if we made like an all-time Muse list, breakup is number 1. Love Struck is number 1. I like how Not Get has those moments that kind of go off the rails. The songs are a bit long. I'm going 4.5, not 5, because I think it's a bit too challenging, but it's rewarding. It's my number 2. I think it's mesmerizing. I think it's enchanting. I love it.
All right. My number 1, 5 stars. Homogenic. Almost the polar opposite of Post, just laser focused, so cohesive in the way she blends the electronics with the lush strings and her powerful emotive voice. I think it's just amazing. The mix on this record is so good. Just phenomenal sounding. Usually something with a record with like so much sub sounds terrible in my car, but man, you can crank this record and it never breaks up or rattles the doors or anything like that. It just sounds big and full, and you can crank it all the way up. It sounds amazing. I love the backing vocals on Hunter, just unreal. Yoga ranks among my favorite Björk songs. Again, the strings and the voice working in tandem, so much emotion on display. I think she was always like clearly a brilliant singer from debut on, and I don't know, on this record I think she soars, her voice goes to even more unimaginable heights. You know, some of the things that she's doing on this record don't even seem like they should be possible. Songs like Unravel and 5 Years, just incredible. All of the songs, I think, pretty much have moments of jaw-dropping brilliance on them from her. Alarm Calls, a track that maybe kind of all these tracks feels like it could have come from an earlier Björk record with that groove, but I think it fits perfectly here as well. It doesn't feel out of place, and it comes at a moment in the record when it needs a little jolt of something, and so it is well used. And then closing with All Is Full of Love, I think just works so perfectly. It kind of takes all of these like heavy emotions and kind of, it's like letting a breath out at the end finally, and just works perfectly to close things out. I think it has her best production, her best arrangements, the best singing, the best songs. The mix is perfect, the mix of ideas and the mix of styles and the clarity of her artistic vision. I think it's all perfect. I don't find a single flaw in this record. 5 stars, Björk. Homogenic.
Was it in your top 5 for 97?
I don't think so. But
what the hell would be ahead of it if it's 5 stars in that review? Man,
maybe it's newly 5 stars. Newly
I
minted.
know like OK Computer and stuff, but like it should be somewhere in the top 5. For me, obviously Homogenic's my number 1, and I have it at 4.5 stars. I can't quite go to 5 because I mean, I will say it's a 5-star album. Absolutely. I think it blew my mind how much like you can hear stolen from it. Like Kid A would not exist without this record. I think we can safely say that. It's just so ahead of its time, futuristic. But I'm not going to listen to it nearly as much as I would a 5-star album. Like it it's my own deficiency in my ear and my musical taste what I can't give this 5 stars yet. Now, maybe if we go back and do 97, I get to 5 stars. Maybe if I listen to it outside of Björk week, it gets to 5 stars. Today, I'm only at 4.5, but I will say this album is kind of mind-blowing, especially if you haven't heard it before and you go into, thinking Radiohead sort of invented the future of music, because it kind of just started right here. All the weirder edges of like electronic, music that would come after, I really think started here, unless there's some other album even earlier that I don't know about. It's possible. Mark Bell comes in, and I had a shock when I saw that he was part of LFO. Different LFO, but it's still shocking when you see Mark Bell of LFO produce this album, because no, it is not the Abercrombie and Fitch guy. No, Summer Girl or whatever the hell that is. Oof, that song sucks. Mark Bell, though, production takes over for Nelly Hooper and them, and it's great. I think it was needed because now it no longer feels like she's following like that House Massive Attack sort of world. Like now she's in her own world. And I don't know if it was because of Bell or if Björk wanted to go there and Bell pushed her, but this is like a whole different universe than what she was doing before. Her singing is still pretty much the same, incredible. It's coldly luxurious and icy and frozen, but full of emotion, full of power. It undulates between those highs and those mid-range really well. And she gets like so much energy into every little phrase. It's amazing. It's like a neutron star like density. Like it doesn't seem possible sometimes. Even when she's like doing these little like flights, it just like feels weighty. She uses her voice as its own accompaniment incredibly well. better than anyone save Kate Bush, probably. And I love the orchestral arrangements, the like elements of trippy electronica. You get a lot of that in Hunter with that hard pan drumming and like menacingly pretty vocals. Those sharp violin and cellos, and that really reminds me of like what Tom York would do on Kid A, and beyond sort of everything that Radiohead was going to do later. But it's not like all like sort of that icy futuristic style. Yoga, whatever, how so big emotional ballad, just so much passion, so much humanity there. Unravels soft and jazzy, a little minimalistic, great lyrics. I love unraveling like a ball of yarn, I think is a very good simile. Bachelorette, you got those big dramatic strings, those staticky beats. 5 Years got like this record scratch beat, real herky jerky. Alarm Call has a great hook. More of a dance track, one of the few. And I think the only criticism I have really of this is that they replaced All Is Full of Love with the like dancey remix by Howie B. If you listen to the one on the greatest hits, it is much better. And I want that All Is Full of Love instead of this Howie B number. So really the only actual criticism I have of this album. And I feel like I'll get to 5 stars on it because it's just so cool and immaculate and interesting and ahead of its time. And I never really listened to it because the cover scares me. And that's on me.
This is why we do this. I used to really like this album. Then I started to love it. Now it's 5 stars for me. It's a 5-star album. Homogenic, whatever we're calling it. I really love Hunter. I love the strings in her angelic voice and the drum machine. I think it all comes together nicely. Everything that you want from Björk comes together in this album. It's her opus. A lot of emotion on this album. Who would have thought we would get a trifecta on Björk? Like, it's crazy. So cool. Yoga is very powerful. I love the bass in it. I think this is easily her best album vocally. Easily. Like, she sounds so good on every track on here. She's really digging deep. She does everything when she's getting up in the clouds and getting that kind of floating angelical quality. And then she gets like that kind of gristle in her voice when she's getting like alarmingly mad and all of that. I love the slow meditative nature of Unravel and the deep dreamy strings. So full of sorrow, excuse me. I love the funeral-esque organ that comes in at the end on that song and the vocal layering. The production is just fantastic. Everything's mixed together just perfectly. Bachelorette is awesome. It sounds like a Bond villain theme. And I think what I was saying before was like a lot of her songwriting lacks drama in the arc it takes. This one has some more arc, but just even when it doesn't, the drama is there. It's so full of emotion. Alarm Call is really cool and has more of a dance feel to it. I love when she says, "This is enlightenment." Like, she has all these profound kind of ideas plucked into everything. This is her masterpiece. I think it's so cool that we landed on a trifecta in this. I really do.
Yeah, very cool. Like, listening to this discography, I was pretty sure we were all going to get, even in our diversity of opinion, it felt like this was leaps and bounds ahead of everything else. And we all feel that way, so that's good.
All right. So let us know what you think of Björk, what you think of these albums, what you think of our lists. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you've not yet done so. Check the video description for links to our website and our merch and our Patreon. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next one.